to the Knit and Grace podcast. This is episode 26. Hello and welcome back if you're a returning viewer. If you're new here, my name is Mia and I am the maker behind Knit and Grace. And on this little corner of the internet, I like to get up to all things fiber arts related, primarily knitting, but I also do quite a bit of sewing. I'm a new spinner and occasionally I crochet. I tend to put out videos in the traditional project recap style, as well as making journals and fiber travel vlogs. And I'm passionate about making clothing that fits you no matter what size you might be. So if this sounds like something you might be interested in, grab a cup of something cozy, click that subscribe button, and let's get settled in for today's episode. And today I have the traditional monthly recap for you all. We did skip a month, so I will be bringing you all of the projects that I finished in July and August as well as some looks at what I'm currently working on, and we will touch on some of my future making plans as we get into the fall as well. But before I get into today's episode, I did want to give a big shout out and thank you to one of the viewers of the channel who recently gifted me a pattern from my Ravelry wish list. Charlene gifted me the Grid Gambit by Samantha Guerin, which is one of the projects that I'll be working on this fall. So I'm really excited to get going on that one. Actually, I was thinking to myself just this past week that I needed to get around to buying the pattern because I need to swatch. I now have two options for my main colors, and so I'm really excited that I will now be able to get started on that. And thanks again, Charlene. And if you yourself are also interested in other ways that you might be able to support the channel, I know I don't mention it every single video, but there are some links in the description down below that you can click on to support the work that I do. So with that, we will get into the first part of today's episode, which is what I'm wearing. And today I once again went into sort of the archives since it is still a little bit warm, although it is starting to cool down finally here in New Jersey where I am. And I am wearing my Parnell. This is a free pattern by Baroque Design Studio, and I finished this in June of 2023, so it has been in my knitting chest for quite some time. And I knit this in woolly knit, they're cotton 4-ply cones, and so I use two colors. The cones are 4-ply, and this pattern is written as a DK weight pattern, and so I held the yarn together. And the main color that I used is cream and the contrast is navy. And so as always, I will link my Ravelry project page below so you can see a little bit more of the details. I won't go into tons of details since this is one that has been featured on the podcast before. And I'll also go ahead and link to the episode where I talked about this one as an FO. So with that, we will go ahead and get right into the finished objects for today's episode. So even though I have not published a podcast in 2 months, I don't have tons to show because I do have a sample and a secret knit that I have been working on this summer. So they have been taking up the priority of my knitting time. But I did get a few things done, and I wanted to share that with you all. And then now that sort of those projects are out of the way, you will start to see some more finished projects from me in the upcoming months, especially as we get into festival season. But the first project that I'm going to show you, I unfortunately don't have finished object photos of yet. I may by the time that the podcast goes up, depending on if I can get pictures later on today of my mom. If not, eventually you will see those go up on Ravelry, and then I will also maybe show them in the next podcast if I haven't gotten to them before the episode goes out. So this is the Relax Tee by Amy Sure Makes. And this is the tee that I was working on this summer for my mom. And I'm really excited with how it turned out. Let's see. You could see the purl ridges there. And yeah. So for the Relaxed Tee, and maybe I'll get some pictures of Mimi wearing it just so that I can have it here while I walk through the details for you all. I know that you all like to see the picture while I talk through it with you. But for my mom's Relaxed Tee, this is one that she commissioned from me for her birthday / Mother's Day. My mom has a birthday and Mother's Day that happen close together every spring. So I told her that I would knit her a garment, and she really loved my Relaxed Tee that I had finished at that time. So for her, we knit her tee in size C, which is the third size, corresponding to, I'm going to say, I should probably have this up. Okay. I obviously have my size and Amy Sure patterns memorized, so we had to pull it up. But I knit size C for my mom, which corresponds to an upper bust of 37.5 inches. I believe her upper bust was just a little bit above that, but I knew that between size C and size D, which is the size that I am, size C would fit her the best. And the actual full bust measurement for size C is 38 inches, which I believe my mom has about a 40-inch full bust. So we went ahead and chose size C for her. I also did a 2-inch bust dart. My mom is busty, as am I, for hers, and I was able to get gauge on size 4 or 3.5 millimeter needles. For my mom's project, we chose to go with Purl Soho's Cotton Pure, which is 100% cotton yarn. It is a sport weight from Purl Soho, and I had actually decided to buy a cone, so I have quite a bit of it left, and I'm thinking that I'm going to make myself a different tee probably next summer, because at this point we're kind of done with summer knitting. But the color is called Beach Rose. And if you do click on the Purl Soho link in my description, I am a Purl Soho affiliate, so while it costs no money for you to purchase anything, I may get a little bit of a commission. With regard to the pattern itself, the pattern, I won't go too much into it because I've talked about it before, but it is written top down. It is a compound raglan. It has the option of body shaping or omitting body shaping. You can add in bust darts, and then it has a short sleeve and a long sleeve version. So for my mom's, I obviously did the short sleeve version. I did shorten the sleeves quite a bit for her by I think 2 inches, because I think the total sleeve length is meant to be 5 inches and hers is about a little bit over 2 inches, like 3 inches. And so what I did was, let me see, did I do that? Yeah. So after I separated for the body and the sleeves, I sort of separated sometime here right before the first purl bump that you see here. And so what I did was I went ahead and did one more purl bump. I did a couple of just stockinette rounds and then went straight into the ribbing. And so that gave us a bit of a shorter sleeve, which is what she wanted. And then for the body of the tee, although it is meant to be a little bit more of a crop tee, the way that Amy's designed it, my mom did want it to be a little bit more full length. So for hers, we shortened the body by 1 inch. So my mom is petite. She is shorter than I am. I believe she is between 4'7" and 4'9", depending on the day, depending on the doctor that's measuring her. And for reference, I'm 4'11" and a half. So even though we shortened it by 1 inch, it is still full length on her because she did want it to hit sort of her full length so that it covers her belly area. So we did try it on her yesterday after I blocked it. I finished this back in July, but I didn't get around to blocking it until just this past week. So we did try it on her. It fits her perfectly, and I'm hoping to get some FO pictures of that one soon. So next up, I finished quite a few pairs of socks over the summer, and since we just talked about my mom's tee, we will talk about the next pair of socks that I knit for her, which I'm woefully behind on my goal of knitting her 12 pairs of socks this year. But I knit her the Wisteria Bloom socks, also by Amy Sher. And so these socks are really lovely. They feature a picot cuff with this lace detail on the leg before going into a 3x1 rib. The pattern does feature a stockinette heel flap, but I opted to do a slip stitch heel flap. And then it also features a contrast toe, but I just knit with the main color for the toe as well. So this is a pattern that is available for free on Amy's blog or paid for if you want the ad-free version through Ravelry or their website. And I knit, don't remember which size, whichever size corresponds to a 64 stitch sock. So I knit these same socks for myself back in the spring, and same as with the relaxed tee, my mom fell in love with the Wisteria Bloom socks and wanted to steal mine, and I said absolutely not. So I went digging in my stash for some yarn that was similar to that one to make her a matching-ish pair of socks. For these, I honestly cannot tell you what the yarn is. I'm pretty sure it is the Sanguine Gryphon, who is no longer dyeing as of a very long time ago, that I picked up at Rhinebeck years and years ago, but I can't be 100% sure in terms of the main color. I do know that the contrast color is Madeline Tosh sock, although again, I don't know what color it is because these were just yarns that were in my stash. I use a US 1 or 2.25 millimeter needle, as I do for all of my socks, and I can now give them to my mom as she's been ogling them, waiting for me to talk about them on the podcast all summer. Next up, I have another pair of socks. These are for myself, and we're going to call these the Cafe Socks by Amy Sher. And I did actually pull up the pattern just for the heel. And so the Cafe Socks by Amy Sher are very similar to my vanilla sock recipe. So that's why I'm calling these that pattern. And the reason for that is because unlike my normal vanilla sock recipe where I do a slip stitch heel, I did choose to continue the 3x1 flat rib into the heel flap. And so that's what they look like. And so this yarn is Woolberry Fiber Co. from their Pride and Prejudice collection. This is the berry sock set in the color The Hand Flex. And I just absolutely love these because they really remind me of an English garden. And then with this really stunning sort of, deep purpley red for the contrast color. And so again, the 3x1 is continued from the sort of leg of the sock into the heel flap. And then I did do the contrasting toes on these. And so again, these are pretty much a very vanilla sock recipe. The reason I'm calling them the cafe socks is because again, I continued the 3x1 into the heel. And so I did refer back to the pattern just to make sure that I was sort of placing all my stitches correctly and doing the heel flap correctly, because for a flat rib heel, I don't need as much because there's not as much condensing, so you don't need to knit as many rows for your heel flap versus a slip stitch heel where I already know the number of rows that I need to knit, because a slip stitch heel will sort of scrunch up a little bit more. So I know that I need more rows for a slip stitch heel flap versus a 3x1 heel flap. And so I referred to the pattern to make sure that I was getting the right measurements for myself. And so I really love the pattern. I really love the socks. I think I test knit the pattern for Amy around this time last year when they came out. And so I just knit up another pair using this beautiful sock yarn that I purchased earlier this spring. Okay, and I promise this is not an only Amy shirt episode. Unfortunately, I think some of the secret items that I've been knitting on are not Amy shirt, and so therefore I'm not talking about them this episode. But if you've been watching the channel since the summer, you know that I recently joined the team, and one of my responsibilities is managing the test knits, and which also means that I get to knit along with the test knitters for our patterns. And so I did finish 2 pairs of the same socks that we will be releasing later in the fall. And these are going to be called the Adventure Days socks. And so a little bit about these socks. These are called the Adventure Days socks because they are choose your own adventure DK weight socks. So it's really exciting. There are 3 different options for the ribbing. So I chose to go with a 2x2 rib. Then you have the leg. You have 2 leg lengths to choose from. So you can do a full sock or an ankle sock. Then there are 3 different heel flaps that you can choose from. And then of course, for additional sort of instructions are given around using contrasts for your heels and toes or for any other parts of the socks as well. And so for mine, I chose to do a 2x2 rib. And then I did a contrast heel flap and gusset. And the heel flap that I chose is the Eye of Partridge heel. And for these, because they're DK weight, so I don't think these are my first pair of DK weight socks, but I definitely had to sort of fudge around with my gauge. With a fingering weight sock, I already know my gauge. I always use a US 1. For these, I ended up using a US 4 or 3.5 millimeter needles for the main fabric, and then I used a US 3, which is 3.25. Yeah, it's a 3.25 millimeter needle for the ribbing. So so US 3, 3.25 for the ribbing, US 4 or 3.5 for the leg, foot, heel, flap, toe, etc. And so that was fun, just to do something that was a little bit out of my norm in terms of figuring out my gauge. I used Knitter's Homestead in the DK sock, and the main color is called Cottage Fairy, and the contrast color is Mulberry Pie. And I did knit 2 of these, although I realize now as I sit here that I don't have the second version. But essentially, when I started the pattern, I cast on, so the pattern is going to be graded from baby all the way to adult large. And so for myself, I typically knit an adult medium because I have wide feet. And so when I was sort of casting on, I miscounted the numbers and ended up casting on the adult small. And so when I picked up this yarn, or I should say my friend Symphony and I picked up this yarn together, so we went half on it, where we got two colors or two skeins of the main color and one skein of the contrast color so that we could make matching socks. We wanted to try out the sock yarn, and we didn't want to each buy a full skein of contrast color, so we went halvesies on an order. And so since I know that she typically knits the adult size A, or the small, she has narrower feet, I decided to just go with it. And so I ended up knitting her pair of socks first, and then I knit my pair of socks second. And the nice thing is that Symphony, like myself and like my mom, we all have the same size feet. So once I knit Symphony socks, I knew sort of, other than the fact that I needed to size up to a B as opposed to an A, I knew how many rounds to knit for my length that I wanted, especially for the foot, and I kind of was just off and running, and I was able to finish, I think, both pairs of socks within like 3 days. I think I cast it on Friday or Saturday, and then I finished like on Monday, both pairs of socks. So they knit up super quickly. Really excited about this pattern. I have quite a bit of yarn left, so I'm going to knit up a couple of pairs for Amy's kiddos. And I'm sure once my mom sees this episode, she will also want a pair of DK weight socks. And I do have some more DK weight sock yarn in my stash that I don't know what to do with. So eventually my mom will also get a pair. So these are going to be sort of the perfect comfy, cozy DK weight socks for wearing around the house this fall. And the last finished project that I have to share with you all, there is another one, but it is a secret sample, so I only have one more. And this is technically 3 in 1, and I'll pop up the picture here because it was gifted. And so I knit a Labubu wardrobe for a former coworker of mine, their Labubu. And so I'm really excited about this. So the pattern is the Labubu wardrobe set by Mackenzie Mullen, who is M to the third, both on Instagram and here on YouTube. And I had so much fun knitting up these little items for the Labubu. And so I bought both of the patterns. So there's 2 sets. One has, I think, a couple of different sweaters and overall, and then the second set has like the little handbag and like a little pinafore and some other items that you can purchase. And so I did make this wardrobe set out of both of the different sets of patterns, so sort of a mix of the two. And so I think the overalls and the hat maybe were part of the first set, and then the satchel was part of the second set. And so I used all scrap yarn for this. For the fingering weight items, which were the satchel and the hat, I used a US 1 or 2.25 millimeter needle. And for the DK weight project, which were the overalls, I used US 2 or 2.75 millimeter needles. So this was all yarn, as I mentioned, that I had scraps. The hat is actually, I featured earlier in the spring. This is Magpie, I want to say. Magpie in their swanky sock, something green, maybe Swamp Thing, something like that. And the overalls are really, really old Madeline Tosh DK that I had in my stash. I forgot the color. I don't think it's calligraphy. It's like, it's Midnight Bloom. It's Midnight Bloom, a good oldie. And the satchel is some Koigu KPBM that I've had in stash as well forever. I have scraps of. No clue what the number is, but it's just like this cute little salmon color. And I had so much fun knitting up this little wardrobe. I think I knit it up in like 2 or 3 days, and she absolutely loves it and sent me pictures of her Labubu recently wearing them. So I'm really excited that she enjoyed the wardrobe set. Okay, so now we get into the works in progress. I have two to share with you all because one is a secret. So many secrets. So I have two works in progress to share with you all today. The first one I believe you will have seen on the podcast if you picked up my Vlogmas in July series. I don't think that I mentioned it on the last podcast, but if you've seen my Vlogmas in July series, you've definitely seen this one. And this is my test of the campus cardigan for Amy Sher. And we're just about done. So this cardigan is knit bottom up. It is sort of the sibling of the campus vest that you all know I love so much. It is a different gauge, so this one is 20 stitches versus the campus vest is 22 stitches, and it has these beautiful set-in sleeves. So I won't go into too much detail on this one because it's a whip, and then two, because I am going to feature it as a project journal here when it releases on September 25th. But I am just about done. I just have one sleeve to go. And this was also featured in my fall making plans video. If you have not checked that out already, I will be sure to link it. And I have the buttons all the way across the room, so you can also check out that video if you want to see sort of the buttons that I have picked out for the cardigan as well. But the cardigan is being knit up in my normal Amy Sher make size, which is size D with a 2-inch bust dart. I am using the recommended needles, which is a size 6 or 4mm needle. I'm using Newburgh Yarn Co. British Wool DK in the color Coleman Red. And so this was part of Kim's Summer Camp Out collection from over the summer. And the British wool is the BFL Mass and Blend out of the UK that has become really popular. And I am knitting mine in the cropped view. So there will be two views, a full length with A-line shaping and a cropped view for the folks that want it a little bit more cropped. So I'm really excited about almost having this one done. I especially wanted to get through the sleeves because now that I've started classes, I need some sleeves and sock knitting. So I have these sleeves to finish up this week during lectures, and it should be done just in time for the pattern to release in a couple of weeks. The last whip that I have to share with you all is one that I don't share all the time just because I only share when I make progress on it, but it was also featured in my Vlogmas in July series, so I was able to make a dent in it, and this is the Sweet Shop Blanket by Laura Penrose. So I will hold it up. Let's see. And so I was able to finish the 5th row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yep, the 5th row. And I am just kind of adding to this one whenever I feel like it, typically about a row at a time, but it's a really great project that you can just sort of pick up and put down as you finish a square here and there. And right now my blanket is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 squares across. So in the month of July, and I think maybe even August, I did finish this in July. So I did the whole 5th row in the month of July, and I've not made any progress since then. But obviously, since you all haven't seen it on the podcast, you're seeing it now. And so for my main color, I'm using Barocco Vintage DK in the color Mochi. And then all of the contrast color blocks are all contrast yarn or just scrap yarns that I have in my stash. And so I will go through that real quick. This green one, which was the first square, is some Mondim, some Retro Sari Primar Mondim. This one is some really old Fiber Company Canopy fingering. This pink color is Little Fiber Co. This was the Pairs Well with Friends color from Flock last year. This color here is Coast to Coast. I want to say it's the Usuals. If it's not the usuals, I'll put in the right name in here, but I made a pair of socks with this color earlier this year as well. This color is, yeah. This is Knit Picks palette in the color Victorian. This is the Backcountry Knitter, and I want to say the color is called Desert Rainbow. And then this last one is a discontinued yarn from Barocco called Arno. And I don't remember the name of the color, but I'll put it here on the screen. And so that's what that's looking like. So I've just been sort of keeping it in an old wool warehouse drawstring bag, and I pick it up whenever I want to sort of put in a few squares, and I'm keeping track of sort of all of the yarns that I'm using in all of the squares, as well as sort of the original project that I knit that yarn in, so that it's a memory keeping blanket. And I'm really excited about my progress so far, and we'll see when I pick it up again. And we have come to the end of today's video. It is a short one. I didn't jinx myself before, so that's great. For my spinning, which I did quite a bit of spinning, so it's also probably why I didn't do a lot of knitting, because I did do Tour de Fleece, and then even in August I did quite a bit of spinning as well. So I will be having part 2 of this episode go up next week, so you can look for all of the spinning projects that I have going on right now. And then for my knitting plans, I actually have already put out a fall making plan video, so I will link that for you all to check out as well. So that just leaves the numbers for today. As always, I'll put them here on the screen so that you can see those as I read them along. And I am super excited about these numbers. So for the month of July, we did have a bit of yarn come in. So as a reminder, the in category is going to be any yarns that I purchase, as well as D-stash will be a negative deduction from this line item. And then the out is only projects that I finish, and only once they're finished. So for instance, like the campus and the Sweet Shop blanket are not included in these numbers because they are not finished. So once the project is fully finished, then I include them in the out category. For July, I did have quite a bit of yarn come in, because I think if you watched my fall planned video, you know that I needed to close out my affiliate program with Amy now that I'm in a sort of contractor with the company. So I did have quite a bit of yarn come in, as I needed to use up that credit of 1,660 yards. However, I did manage to use up quite a bit of yarn at 1,517 yards. So that left me with a positive of the month of 143 yards. Then the August numbers are super exciting. I managed to de-stash quite a bit of yarn. Some yarn did come in, but I did de-stash quite a bit of yarn as well. So we are at negative 160 for the month for August. And then in terms of the amount of yarn finished, so mostly just socks, so not too much, but 426 yards. And I think it was like the 2 DK weight socks, and I think maybe another pair of socks is all that I finished in the month of August. So unfortunately, the yardage for the month was a little low, but we were able to de-stash quite a bit of yarn. So for the month of August, that gives us a negative 586 yards for the month. So year-to-date total in is 30,149 yards. Holy moly. Total out is 12,990 yards. And then the total positive into my stash is 17,159 yards, which I'm actually still excited about, because that is 400 yards less than the last time that I podcasted. So for the month of September, I can say for sure no yarn is coming in. And then for October, the plan is to not buy any yarn when I'm at Rhinebeck and only buy fiber. So hopefully we can make a little bit of dent on those numbers before we get to Barcelona in November. What I will say is I still haven't figured out how to figure in my yardage that I'm spinning into the stash quite yet, because I'm pretty much, as I'm spinning, I'm knitting the yarn, other than kind of my initial first 2 or 3 projects that I'm just going to keep as souvenirs and I'm not going to knit up. So since I'm kind of sort of spinning and knitting right away, I think that it's gonna just end up being what it is, and then I just won't count that in the out category either. So, but eventually as I start spinning more, I might, change that up and sort of incorporate a different section where I show how much yardage is coming in from my hand spun as well. And that's all we have. And of course, with my luck, I ran out of battery just as we were wrapping up the episode. So that's all I have for you all today. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please be sure to do all the podcasty things, like, subscribe, and leave me a comment letting me know what you've been working on or even what you're looking forward to this fall. I know that this time of year is typically when everyone starts rewatching Gilmore Girls, as do I normally, and I surprised myself this year. So, influenced by Kim, my friend Kim of Newburgh Yarn Co., instead of turning on Gilmore Girls as I normally would on September 1st, I turned on Vampire Diaries, which this is my first rewatch. So I watched Vampire Diaries from beginning to end when it was first airing on TV. So, old school commercials, all that stuff, weekly syndication. And this is my first rewatch, so I have been taking it a little bit slower because I am actually paying more attention to the show, because even though I do remember the show pretty vividly, actually, because it's my first time rewatching it, I'm sort of just taking a little bit more time to pay attention to the show and sort of remember all the actors and everything that went on. So really excited for the season. In terms of this month, I do have a couple more episodes for you, maybe a couple more that I'm thinking about potentially putting out, but for sure next week you're going to see part 2 of this episode, which is going to be related to my spinning, and then we will have a project journal for the campus, and I have already started sort of putting together my content for Rhinebeck. So really excited about that, which I can't believe is only a few weeks away. And so I have to get on casting on my 2 projects, which I talk about in my fall making plans video. So I guess I will leave you here and not make this video much longer than it needs to be. I will hopefully see you next week for the spinning content. Otherwise, until next time, be sure to take care of yourselves, your loved one, and each other, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.